يعطيكم العافية. ضمن فعاليات اليوم الثاني لمؤتمر الشراكة، المؤتمر الكويتي الثاني لمشروعات الشراكة بين القطاع العام والخاص، هيكون معنا دكتور أيوب هو رئيس مجلس إدارة المركز التميز لمشروعات الشراكة في اسطنبول بدولة تركيا، وهيتكلم في موضوع تقييم تأثير مشاريع الشراكة على التنمية المستدامة، ويتكلم تحديدا عن مشروع جسر كانكل والطريق السريع لعام 1915. فليتفضل مشكورا.
Good morning again. This is Dr. Aydin from Istanbul, the chairman of Istanbul PPP Center of Excellence, and now I would like to just wait. Maybe a couple, just start, or a couple of minutes we can wait if you want. Okay. Okay, as mentioned during the panel, now I would like to give some insights from Turkish PPP experience and Turkish PPP projects. And actually my topic was economic impact on the government and the PPP, how assist, how aid to this kind of economic growth for government. And also I would like to give more information regarding the PPP projects. One of the biggest one in Turkey is the Çanakkale Bridge project. So three main topics we have: sustainable development and economic impact of PPP projects. The second one is the Çanakkale Bridge, some information regarding the project itself. And the third one is the economic impact of the project itself, how a PPP projects affected economic growth in Turkey. Okay, first of all, actually it's not easy to define economic impact, and because there are many parameters and many factors that we should focus on economic impact and how we can measure economic growth with the infrastructure investment. So we have 4 parameters. The first one is effects on the overall economy of a region or a country. The second one is changes in economic activity, the activities that the projects manage, direct, and manipulate. The third one is the job creation, increase of the employment. And the third one is income, productivity, and other relevant economic indicators. So we can measure those parameters to calculate, to define the economic growth, how a PPP project or how an infrastructure project affects an economic growth. Why? Actually, the question is why to elaborate impact on economy. As we discussed during the panel, the civil society reaction and the awareness and the civil engagements are very important for an infrastructure investment for state, for the public side. So the policymakers would like to see value for money analysis of the projects. Before starting a project, especially in infrastructure PPP projects, really value for money analysis are quite important for government to explain the outputs and the outcomes of the projects, especially in economic indicators. So the impact on economy, the measurement of impact on economy is very important for policymakers, investors, and all stakeholders to better understand the PPP projects or infrastructure projects. Decision-making process, evaluate the project's viability, which is very important as well, because if a project, infrastructure project, and a PPP project is a commercial and not a social, it's a commercial infrastructure investment, so you should know the project viability and the revenue stream for long term, because those are long-lasting projects, not short-term projects. So the project viability cycle is also very important, and the value for analysis and the economic impacts are very important to show the viability of the project for 10 years, 15 years, and more. And the third one is the long-term sustainability. Also, this is a very important theme and topic for PPP projects. So we can use 3 types of parameters. The one is the direct effects of a project to the economy. The second one is indirect effects, and the third one is induced effects. So we have 3 parameters to calculate economic impacts on the macroeconomic indicators. So including construction activities, so once we study for economic impacts for a PPP project, we have 3 types of duration. The first one is the preparation and the construction. So what is happening during the preparation of the project and the construction? Mostly we can say 3 years, 4 years, because we are talking about the big mega infrastructure projects. Those last 3 years. So what is happening during the construction? The economic impact during the construction is also very essential for calculation. The second one is the commissioning and the operation. The operation for 15 years, 10 years, 20 years and more. Also, there is a very strict and very clear economic impacts on the projects. And the third one is also the handover process. So what is happening when the duration of the agreement finalized and the projects transfer to the public side. So what's happened from economic perspective, what's happening during a project? The first one is creating of construction jobs. This is also very important because, for example, I will give some numbers regarding the Istanbul, the Çanakkale Bridge projects. During the Çanakkale Bridge construction, 20,000 new jobs created by the projects. 20,000 jobs for 3 years. And supplier and vendor contracts, it's also very effective on increasing the economic activities during the construction. Many goods has been a topic of an economic activities during the construction. Equipment rentals, which is directly related to the construction. Increased demand for services as well in a local partner and or a regional part of a country. The increased demand of service also very important for construction time. Local business support, this is also very important because PPP projects also has a very direct effect on regional development and local business development during the construction. Improved transportation efficiency, if we are talking about transport PPP projects like Çanakkale Bridge or highway or port or airport, the transport is directly related to mobilization of people and goods. So this mobilization affects on economic growth of a country. Tourism, recreational opportunities, also bringing the people and creating new opportunities for a region and additional commercial outputs. Those are the immediate impacts on the project, which is starting from the construction time. And secondary economic activities generated by the projects, these are indirect, but once the project finalized and completed the construction and started the operation, we can see those effects and activities, business expansion and attraction on the project location, supply chain development after the operation, also need some new job creation regarding the operational phase, real estate and property value, which is so important because you are investing in transport, in highway, in airport, and around the project location, the real estate value increased a lot. Here I would like to stress one thing. Now in the world globally, and theoretically, we are discussing land value capture. This topic is very important because in Turkey, unfortunately, we missed that opportunity because once you decided, a government, once decided and implement a PPP project in a location in the periphery of city, the new project location, the real estate prices and the values increased. So those increased prices and the value goes to the private sector, not the state to public side. So this land value capture means that the government should consider this increase of real estate value and get some additional taxes, revenues from the projects. This is very important. I would like to give a very interesting example from Stockholm. The government of Stockholm, the municipality of Stockholm, decided to implement a metro from the downtown to periphery. And they started to construction of this metro investment, not from the downtown, but from the periphery. And once they started this metro and they published the lines of the metro, the people becomes an awareness about the lines of the roads of the metro, and the prices started to increase. And the periphery lands, they get more revenue from the land taxes. And the municipality used that land taxes for the continuity of the metro station construction. This is an excellent example from Stockholm. So this land value capture and the real estate taxes are more important for generating new revenue stream for government for PPP projects. And the third one is enhanced trade and market expansion. Yes, this is very important. This is not just global trade, but also local trade. When a PPP infrastructure project started, the local business also increased, and we have some empirical data from Turkey. The fifth, industrial and commercial development, I will touch upon this item as well in Çanakkale Bridge and the region. The sixth one, improved commuting and labor market accessibility. It's job creation, which is very important for infrastructure investment as well. And the last one is the tourism and hospitality sector. These are the service sector. So it means that infrastructure service lead the service sector ahead. So also this is very important. So we are not focusing on just infrastructure sector, but also service sector will follow the infrastructure investment as well. And primary main drivers of economic growth, how we can calculate how are the parameters of economic growth. The left side is the primary main drivers. You can calculate GDP, the increase of GDP, the increase of per capita households, the increase of job creation, the numbers of job creation, SES, environmental and social services that the project created, and sector specific, if you are doing a project in healthcare, the numbers in the healthcare sector. If you are doing a project in the transport, the numbers in the transport sector. So it's a sector specific output. And the last one is, as I mentioned, previous slide, state revenue tax impact of the project. Those are primary effects. So as a government, as a decision maker, if we would like to calculate, measure the economic impact and value for money and value for people, so those are the main drivers. And the secondary one is the technology, innovation, agriculture, industry, as Dr. Alit mentioned, integration of the society. Those are the following up the main drivers. So economic activity impact generated by the project, what is happening? What is happening when the project started, not the construction? Increase in the production. Yes, industrial zones and the production of the projects, you can clearly define an increase of production. Increase in consumption. Yes, it's good for liberal markets, mobilization of goods, mobilization of people. So it's also lead to consumption. Increase in trade, as I mentioned. Increase in exports. It's also assists the increase of the export of the country, of a region, of a place, of a location, whatever you can call. Increase in the volume of fixed assets. As I give an example, fixed assets globally are very important for a PPP project, and not just PPP project, but also for infrastructure projects. Increase in tourism in service sector, increase in agriculture, demographic change. Demographic change is also very important because a project can cut a local and internal migration process as well. So it means that an infrastructure projects, a PPP projects, can increase an economic growth in a region which can block the integral migration. And the public revenues, increase in production brings a tax added value, which is very important for economic growth as well, for a state. Increase in consumption. Consumption means generate new taxes for states. Increase in trades, also including local trades. These are also very important. Why I am stressing those revenues? Because for a successful process of PPP projects, revenues of governments are crucial. So, because to revitalize the PPP projects, governments should give a governmental guarantee or sovereign guarantee or fixed asset guarantee, whatever we can call. But at the same time, also the government can create a new revenue generation from projects itself. Now, I would like to give insights from Çanakkale Bridge projects, which is one of the mega projects completed last 10 years in Turkey. And it was not a new idea for Turkish government, because the Çanakkale Bridge idea is coming from, you can see before the Chris, it's 500 years, and it's a very famous idea for how you can actually link to those Europe and the Asia continents. And 2017, Çanakkale Bridge tender realized, and only 3 years the construction completed, and totally in 4 years started the operation. You can see the contract awarded January 2017, and 2018 effective date for contract, it was the signature, it was the financial closure of the projects, and you can see the May 2018, and from the contract, it's 1.5 years from the contract to financial closure. We need a 1.5 year, which is quite important and very important for a successful of PPP projects. And opening ceremony was March 2022. So you can see from the financial closure, it's 4 years for the construction, but from the tender, we need 5 years for such kind of mega projects. And this is the location of the bridge, which is connects Asia and Europe. And we have, 3 bridges in Istanbul, which is connect Europe and Asia. But this is the first bridge, rather than the Istanbul bridges. And it's a regional development purposes. The government has a regional development purposes here. You can see why this is important, because the south side, we have Izmir, the third biggest city. And the right side, you can see Istanbul. Istanbul is the first biggest city. And between Istanbul and Izmir, Çanakkale, you can see less developed. And how come? It's very close to Istanbul, but it's also very far to Istanbul because of the mobilization, because of the connectivity of the big cities to here. So the main purpose is also generating new revenue, generating new trade, generating new regional development purpose in the regional location. You can see how this region was less developed when you compare with Turkey. Only the population was 4% of Turkey, and the GDP was 4%. But dramatically, you will see after the construction and the operation, those numbers, even the population and the GDP ratio is increasing just only 1 year's operation and 3 years construction. And I cannot imagine how this will increase in 5 years and 10 years during the whole operation time. And wider hinterland, Istanbul and Izmir included, the biggest cities, you can see the population suddenly increased to 30% and the GDP to 40%. So it's a very dramatic picture actually. It's very close to Izmir and Istanbul, but the GDP and the population is 4% and the GDP is the 4%. But when you include Istanbul and Izmir, it becomes 30 and 40% of GDP and the population accordingly. So the project southern region, Çanakkale, Balıkesir, is 2 cities, and Edirne, Kırıkkale, Tekirdağ is the main region. Those are really less developed cities in Turkey. Why the government decided, from economic perspective, why decided such kind of mega projects in a less developed location? Because of lack of proper logistics, lack of transportation and infrastructure in the region, and the project stimulates better interaction among the provinces of the region and the hinterland. Hinterland is Istanbul and Izmir, so agriculture, industrial, and service sectors. So it's very clear now once the construction started and during the operation, the agriculture, industrial and service sector numbers and statistics are increasing, slightly increasing. And region has a strong potential for further growth because it's very close to cities, Istanbul and Izmir. And now the project, the bridge, is affecting the economy of the region dramatically. Okay, major project features as a PPP project, as a BOT project. What are the major features of the project? It's a build, operate, transfer, 4 years construction, 20 years operation, so totally 16 years tender process. You can see 16 years, 2 months and 12 days. Cost of the projection 3.1 billion euros. It's including the construction. It's including the construction interest. It's including the financial cost. It's including the operational cost. And it includes the maintenance cost as well. It's not just the construction cost. This 3.1 billion, there are main features for those costs. And the traffic guarantee is daily. You can see the per day, 45,000 cars. It's a daily guaranteed by the state to the private sector for 12 years. And minimum proposal among all bidders, and the consortium won the tender. So you can see the financial close. It's a very wide perspectives of financial close. You can see loan is 2.2 billion euros, and international invested is 1.5. National, it's 600 million euros, and the equity is the 875 million euros. This is also a very important slide because while we were discussing about the economic impact, also we shouldn't miss this important point of PPPs and infrastructure also attracting the FDIs and the international investments. As you can see, only one project the Turkish government attracted is a successful to attraction of the 1.5 billion euros in just 3 years. When you compare 6 years from 2007 to 2013, the Turkish government, with the aid, with the assist of PPP tools, attracted $10 billion only for infrastructure projects, healthcare and transportation. So some sustainability issues also embedded to projects like solar panels, some social economic impacts on the village, on the people, and value for people issues. Now, and I would like to finalize my presentation with the numbers of economic impact of this project. Yeah, you can see average household income. This is local based, but you can see this green line is the region. 5 cities, as I mentioned, Balıkesir, Çanakkale, Edirne, Kırıkkale, and Tekirdağ. Those are 5 regions. You can see 2018, I think this one doesn't work, but you can see 2018, the green line, it's a sharply increase with the construction of the projects. So the GDP, average household GDP per capita, is increasing with the start of the projects in a region. And when you compare the other lines, the blue one is the wider hinterland, Istanbul, including Istanbul and Izmir, and the red one is the Turkish household. You can see the difference is the gap is closing. So now the region per capita is increasing, and maybe 5 years they will over the Turkish and the not the maybe wider hinterland, but maybe it can catch the Turkish GDP. So this is the ratios, percentage change in average household income compared to previous year. You can see, starting with the construction 2018 and 2019, the per capita, GDP per capita is increasing 26% yearly, and after the construction completed and the operation, still it's over the Turkish average. And this is also a very good comparison between 2014, 2016 and 2016, 2021. 2014 and 2016, it's before the construction started. You can see the green is the region. It's only 10,000 Turkish liras. This is the household, the average for 2 years. And you can see for 5 years average in the green line, it becomes 15,000. It means that it's nearly 2 times higher than the Turkish GDP increase. So only one unique PPP project, infrastructure investment projects in a region, multiply 2 times households increase in a region. So this is just only for 5 years, but we will see for the future. Yeah. These are some real facts of Çanakkale Bridge outputs. Increase in the number of newly opened business. I will show the numbers. Increase in the number of hotels. Yeah, believe me, it's a very strange, but in Çanakkale, after the construction completed, the first 5-star hotels opened. So it means that the Istanbul and the Izmir people started to travel to this region, means that economic activities and the new value bring to the region. Increase in the number of industrial zones. Now, in 3 years, 3 more industrial zones open in the region, and those are occupancy are the 100%. Development and growth of trade in the region, which is very expected outputs. Contribution to local development, the showdown of integral migration, increase in logistics networks, increase in logistic facilities. So those logistics related to logistic increase is also assist to export numbers for the region. So export is rising, and the GDP and the per capita is accordingly increased as well. Creating an alternative production area to a major metropolis like Istanbul, which is very important because all of industries and the producers would like to be in Istanbul because of the transportation facilities. But when you create a new route for producers and the industrial zones, also they would like to move their production services centers to this region as well, because now they can reach to Istanbul in 2 hours. Before it was approximately 6 and 7 hours. So, as the firms, registered firms into Çanakkale Chamber of Commerce and Industry increased 37 just in 2 years after the construction completed and the operation started. Now the occupancy reached 100% in the industrial zone. 2 new industrial zones also opened last year, you can see, and many international companies invested in that industrial zones because it's the border projects. So we have a border with Bulgaria and Greece, so it facilitates the export of the region products as well. Here you can see some products, Havran mandarin, Biga peach. Those are become very famous, not in Turkey, but also in Bulgaria, in Greece. So an infrastructure projects also supporting the regional producers and the regional products. It's very dramatic outputs. And these are the potential region I told. And another SCA impacts also, maybe we should also consider and touch upon it. These are the travel time saving. Also this bridge decreased the traffic. You can see at the left side, this is the queue of the trucks. Before the bridge, they use the ferry. Sometimes it lasts 2-3 hours to wait to get a proper ferry to across the Asian side. And so now it's 4 minutes. In 4 minutes, the trucks and the logistics facilities can across the Asian side or from Asia to Europe side. So it's travel time saving, it's a lot. So travel distance saving, decrease in the carbon emission as well. Those are the Asia impacts. And the last slide, you can see how we can calculate. We start how we can calculate the economic impact. So the government invested in 3.1 billion euro for a PPP project, for an infrastructure project, and against in 14 years. In 16 years, 4 years construction and 12 years operation, expected benefit of the project is $15 billion. Just this is a value for money which they stated and which defined in the beginning of the project. After 5 years, probably this 15 billions will increase to $20–25 billion. So you can see we can have a benefit from 6 or 7 times than you invested. So thank you very much. If you have a question, I would like to give some answers.
Dr. Ayub, I'm slightly confused with your last slide, if you can bring it back. Because I understand total collection on this project is in Turkish lira, right?
Yes.
And with the currency exchange rate dropping in Turkey, so how does the consortium is expected to make this much profit, like 15 billion euro compared, I mean, there is a drop in the collection compared to what was expected, right?
Thank you, thank you. Very good question. But you know, the numbers are related to GDP and the per capita, which is Turkish lira, which is local currency. But the projects and all guarantees are the hard currency. So this $1 billion, $15 billion expected is the hard currency, and the $3.1 billion was a hard currency. And the guarantee, it's not on the local currency, it's on the hard currency as well. Those Turkish liras are the GDPs and the household increase. Those are not related to projects budget. Those are from the economic perspective of the region.
Dr. Ayub, thank you very much for your presentation. Well informative, but I have a question actually. Honestly, it's more like an elaboration of the importance of the feasibility study to focus on the return and the value for the people as detailed, where like you have focused on a certain region, a certain area, and show how such a PPP project would bring prosperity, economic prosperity, and social prosperity to the region, and measure the after effects of the implementation as well. And you have taken us through like the phases of during the construction, the operation, afterwards. Now, this is something that, you know, sometimes is very hard to measure. So, you know, some of them they come as like quantitative, and some of them are just qualitative, you know.
Yes.
But the thing about it is like, how did Turkey, as in general, establish, I would say, the consensus to gather such kind of material to measure? I mean, for example, you know, this is maybe kind of regional project, whereas like here, like we conduct BPPs on national level. So it's sometimes it's a challenge to capture such kind of, you know, information and measure it and to link it as a direct effect or indirect effect to the project.
Dear Naif, very good question. You know, but you know, I would like to turn back to the PPP philosophy, Naif. Maybe we discussed a lot, years and years together. And the PPP should create new revenue from the project itself. So, yeah, the government can decide an infrastructure project with a PPP model, with a social service purpose. And they can use an avail to payment, so like an installment. Not purposing generating from projects itself, so not based on user fee. It can be an option. But as a developing country in Turkey, if you can create a project where the projects can create its own finance, you should focus on that part of the country. Because in Turkey, we have two parts of the country. One is the economic you know, focusing areas like Istanbul, Marmara, and the Çanakkale as well. And those regions is creating more than 50% of all economic activities in Turkey. So in one part, the government is purposing creating more economic impacts and delivering, distributing to other parts of the country. So it was a decision of where the government can use the private finance and user fee, because those projects, it's a very good question, because those projects are not just a unique infrastructure project. Those are trade, commercial infrastructure projects like rivers. So those are not roads, those are not bridges. Those are like rivers, like water, which is bringing some prosperity around the region And not just only the region, also the region create more export, more import, more economic development, and distributing other parts of the country. So the awareness made like that by the government and convince the other part of the people. Okay, if I, as a government, if I invest in, for example, in south side of Turkey, and invest in such kind of $1 billion, $2 billion projects, so how come those finance come to those projects? It means the 100% will come from the national budget. But here, a part of this investment is coming from the user fee. So it means that who use the projects, who gets some benefits from the projects, they paid. And any question?
Good morning. My name is Rahul Sharma. I am from Malganim International. My question is, when you are adding sustainability to any of the infrastructure projects.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Okay. When you are adding sustainability to any of the infrastructure projects, there is a certain element which increases the overall development cost of the project. How you are addressing those issues when the development cost or the overall project development cost is increased? And second question is, based on this bridge example, what are the revenues through which the development or the developer companies were generating revenues? What are those elements were there? Okay. My first question is, it's okay now? Yeah. When you are adding sustainability to any of the projects, this new buzzword in last 5 years, it increases the overall project cost. How you are addressing those things in your country? As well as my second question is regarding this bridge example which you have given just now. I would like to know what are those revenue generation elements were there for the developers, because they have put equity, they have taken loan, so they need a return basically. So how they were generating revenues on those points?
Thank you, dear Naif. So the first question is sustainability and ESG issues. Actually, as during my panel I told you, those are very new trends, even in Turkey. So once the project started, actually I know the government didn't know anything about the SDGs and sustainability issues and the UN SDG goals. Honestly, it was not a calculation of how you can calculate SDGs. Okay, it brings some positive outcomes from the perspective of the COE emissions and climate change. Yeah, those are important because the government also forced the private sector to put some new trees around the projects, but it was not a calculation actually. Now after the calculation you can use the COE because the track and the queues and you can calculate, but still, you know, it's theoretically also we are not sure, we are not definition of how we calculate the commissions and the SDGs, so still we are working. Come back to Mr. Naif's questions as well. The calculation of economic growth is not clear as well. Still, we are working how we can calculate the economic impact of in infrastructure projects, and the sustainability issues and other difficult topics to calculate. But it seems that at least the COE and the global warming and the climate change, this branch is bringing some positive outputs to the regions as well. And the private companies are also struggling with the villages, and they are creating new social projects. And even in the Athens, in the UN PPP forum, the Çanakkale Bridge won an award, a PPP award, which are affecting the social life in the region. So the second question is the revenue generating. So revenue generating, this is a very complicated question as well, because once you are talking about a less developed region, it means that you based on a user fee project, but the people, the region, the local people cannot afford it. So how you can generate, this is a very complicated project, and it's a very problematic issues for the governments, calculating, shaping the right models of the projects. But it's not just 1, 2, 3 years projects, it's long-lasting projects, and 5 years, 10 years, 15 years idea, dream of the government. It's maybe impacting on the regional growth and development. So now the logistics, the transport, the export hub, it's like a river, not just for using the local people. So those projects not belongs to local people. It's generate new revenue for the whole country, and from this output, positive output, the local people get benefits from the projects. Maybe 15 years, those local people will be balanced with the other Turkish citizens, and they can afford it. But the government knows that. And this is the second issue of the right shaping of PPP projects. The government knows very well this paradigm, actually, and they fix the price very less. Normally, they calculate, for example, 15 euros for 40,000 users, but now they apply to price just only 5 euros. And this 10 euros comes from the government budget for 5 years. This is very important from another topics of PPP, price elasticity. How the government use the price elasticity to attract more users for improving the PPP projects, especially for regional development purposes. Okay, thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayoub, for your presentation.